Imagine finally holding your published novel in your hands, a lifelong dream realized. But what if the very hope that drove you to finish it becomes the source of unexpected suffering, as anxieties about reviews and sales begin to eclipse the initial joy? Schopenhauer dared to suggest that hope is not always a benevolent force, but a potentially dangerous illusion, a gilded cage that traps us in a cycle of endless striving and inevitable disappointment. Born in the 19th century, a time brimming with optimism, Arthur Schopenhauer swam against the current, earning himself the reputation of a pessimist. Yet his philosophy offers a powerful antidote to the unrealistic expectations pervasive in modern life, offering a path to contentment by abandoning our reliance on hope. The endless cycle of desire, temporary satisfaction, and renewed desire refueled by hope is a central pattern Schopenhauer exposes. In a world obsessed with relentlessly pursuing positive thinking and engaging in endless self-improvement projects, Schopenhauer's ideas present a radical challenge to our core assumptions about what it truly means to live a good and fulfilling life. What if the key to a more peaceful and fulfilling existence lies not in endlessly chasing our hopes and dreams, but in deeply understanding and accepting the inherent nature of suffering that is woven into the fabric of existence? Could letting go of unrealistic expectations and all the attendants striving to fulfill them actually lead to greater contentment and enhanced resilience in the face of life's inevitable trials and tribulations? Throughout this video, we'll confront and explore these profound and uncomfortable questions. We will uncover how Schopenhauer's philosophy directly tackles these issues, offering a unique and, at times, highly controversial perspective on the underlying human condition and ways of dealing with it. To truly understand Schopenhauer's perspective, we must delve into his major work, The World as Will and Representation, which serves as the cornerstone for his philosophical system. In this magnum opus, Schopenhauer lays out a complex and challenging view of reality, arguing that the underlying essence of the world is not a rational order, but rather a blind, insatiable, and relentless driving force that he famously terms the will. The will, in Schopenhauer's framework, is not a conscious or deliberate desire, but a far more fundamental and primal force that drives all living beings to seek constant satisfaction, only to be inevitably met with fleeting moments of temporary relief before the cycle of longing and striving begins anew. According to Schopenhauer, our direct experience of the world is merely a representation, a filtered and interpreted version of this underlying will. It is this very will that serves as the ultimate source of all human suffering, an idea we will examine in greater depth. We cling to hope as if it were an indispensable lifeline. But what if it's actually a heavy anchor, relentlessly weighing us down and ultimately preventing us from truly and clearly understanding the fundamental nature of reality? What if our relentless pursuit of happiness is, paradoxically, actually perpetuating our own suffering, and the very things we believe will save us are, in fact, the chains that are holding us back from a more peaceful existence? Schopenhauer's answer to this perplexing predicament is likely not what you might expect, especially from a so-called pessimist. He doesn't advocate for despair or nihilism, but rather for a radical and transformative shift in our core perspective. Could finding beauty and solace in the present moment, or accepting the inherent limitations of existence, offer a viable pathway out of the seemingly endless cycle of striving and suffering? In the remainder of this video, we will explore how to effectively apply Schopenhauer's profound insights to our own lives, discovering a path toward greater resilience, enhanced contentment, and ultimately a profound sense of freedom from the often tyrannical grip of hope. But is this lifeline of hope truly serving us, or subtly blinding us to a deeper, more pervasive reality? Let's dissect this concept of hope, contrasting society's often simplistic encouragement with Schopenhauer's more sobering view. We're constantly told to never give up on our dreams, to keep the faith, as if unwavering optimism is the key to unlocking a better future. Schopenhauer, however, cautions us that such hope is often a form of self-deception, a projection of our desires onto the future that blinds us to the suffering inherent in the present moment. This isn't to say that all hope is inherently bad, but rather that we must critically examine the nature of our hopes and the degree to which they are grounded in reality. Unrealistic hopes, those built on fantasy rather than genuine possibility, are particularly dangerous, as they set us up for inevitable disappointment and intensify our present suffering by drawing our attention away from what is. So, how can we reconcile this societal encouragement of hope with Schopenhauer's warning? To further understand this critique, we must expand on the nature of suffering as Schopenhauer perceived it. For Schopenhauer, suffering is not merely an occasional unpleasant experience, but the fundamental condition of existence, driven by the insatiable, ceaseless churning of the will. Happiness, then, is not a permanent state to be achieved, but merely a temporary cessation of suffering, a brief respite from the underlying pain of existence. Consider the analogy of a pendulum swinging between pain and boredom. When we are actively pursuing a desire, we experience the pain of longing, the discomfort of lacking what we want. When we finally achieve that desire, we experience a temporary satisfaction, a moment of relief. But this satisfaction is fleeting. Soon, boredom sets in, and we find ourselves seeking new desires, initiating the cycle of striving and potential suffering all over again. This constant fluctuation is, according to Schopenhauer, the very essence of human experience. But where does hope fit into this equation? Let's develop the pattern further. Desire, temporary satisfaction, renewed desire, and potential suffering. Consider the all-too-common desire for fame. Many people dream of being celebrated, of having their name known and admired by millions. Achieving this fame, however, often comes with a heavy price. There is the constant fear of losing it, the relentless public scrutiny, and the immense pressure to maintain a certain image. The initial satisfaction of being recognized soon gives way to anxieties and insecurities. This vividly illustrates how the pursuit of even seemingly positive goals can ultimately lead to renewed and intensified suffering. This leads to the crucial point. Hope, by focusing our attention on a potentially unrealizable future, can actually intensify our present suffering, exacerbating the very pain we are trying to escape. The more we hope for something, the more emotionally invested we become in its attainment, and the more we suffer when it doesn't materialize. But what drives this cycle? Schopenhauer's concept of the will to live provides a crucial insight. The will, as we've established, is the underlying force driving all actions, an unconscious, ceaseless striving for self-preservation and propagation. It's not a conscious choice, but rather a fundamental aspect of our being, driving us to seek survival and reproduction. Even seemingly altruistic acts, according to Schopenhauer, are ultimately driven by this will to live. Consider protecting one's family. While it may appear to be a selfless act of love, it ultimately ensures the survival of one's genes and the continuation of one's lineage. The will, in its relentless pursuit of self-preservation, drives us to seek satisfaction, but that true and lasting satisfaction is ultimately unattainable because the will itself is insatiable. Any satisfaction we achieve is merely temporary, quickly giving way to renewed desire and striving. Is the answer, then, to simply give up? Consider the pursuit of financial success. Many people believe that achieving a certain income level or accumulating a certain amount of wealth will bring them happiness and security. However, once they reach that goal, they often find themselves wanting more, driven by comparison with others and the desire for increased security. The initial satisfaction of achieving their financial goals quickly fades, replaced by a new set of desires and anxieties. Schopenhauer challenges the common belief that hard work and perseverance will inevitably lead to happiness. We're constantly told that if we just work hard enough, we can achieve our dreams, and that happiness will naturally follow. But Schopenhauer argues that this is a false promise, because the will always find new desires to pursue, new goals to strive for, and new sources of dissatisfaction. So, is there any way to truly break free from this cycle? To further complicate matters, Schopenhauer introduces the concept of representation, which describes how our perception of reality is inherently distorted and filtered through our own subjective experiences and desires. Our minds do not passively receive information from the world. Instead, they actively shape and interpret it, often in ways that further fuel the cycle of desire and suffering. Social media provides a potent example of this phenomenon. Platforms like Instagram and Facebook are filled with carefully curated representations of success and happiness, often presenting a highly idealized and unrealistic view of reality. This constant exposure to seemingly perfect lives can easily lead to feelings of inadequacy and envy, further fueling our own desires and intensifying our dissatisfaction with our own lives. If the will is the problem and representation distorts the solution, is there any hope for escape? While the overall picture painted thus far may seem bleak, Schopenhauer does offer paths of escape from the relentless grip of the will. He proposes three primary avenues: aesthetic contemplation, asceticism, and acceptance. Let's begin with art as a temporary respite. By engaging with art, we can temporarily transcend our individual desires and immerse ourselves in a state of detached contemplation. Listening to beautiful music, viewing a great painting, or reading a profound poem can temporarily quiet the restless will, providing a sense of peace and detachment from the everyday struggles and anxieties that typically consume us. This experience offers a glimpse of a reality beyond the endless cycle of striving and dissatisfaction. But can art alone provide a lasting solution? Asceticism offers a more radical path to diminish the will. This involves the deliberate suppression of desires and attachments through severe self-discipline and abstention. Monastic life, with its emphasis on poverty, chastity, and obedience, serves as an example of asceticism aimed at weakening the will. By renouncing worldly possessions, sensual pleasures, and personal ambition, ascetics seek to detach themselves from the desires that fuel suffering. It's important to note that Schopenhauer presents this neutrally, not necessarily as an endorsement for everyone. Asceticism, while potentially effective in diminishing the will, is an extreme path that may not be suitable or desirable for all. But is there a less extreme, more accessible path to freedom? Acceptance, then, provides perhaps the most practical and accessible path to finding peace amidst suffering. This involves acknowledging the inherent suffering of existence without succumbing to despair. It means facing reality as it is, rather than clinging to unrealistic hopes or expectations. By accepting the inevitability of suffering, we can free ourselves from the constant struggle against it, and instead focus on finding contentment in the present moment. Contrast the anxious anticipation of a future event, such as a vacation, with the mindful enjoyment of a simple activity like taking a walk in nature. The anxious anticipation is often filled with worries and expectations, while the mindful walk allows us to appreciate the beauty and serenity of the present moment, free from the tyranny of future desires. So how do these practices disrupt the cycle? These practices disrupt the will-desire-action temporary relief dissatisfaction, new desire pattern, by reducing the power of the will and fostering contentment with the present. Through meditation, for example, one can learn to observe desires as they arise without automatically acting on them, creating space for conscious choice and detachment. This allows us to break free from the automatic reactivity that characterizes much of our lives. By recognizing the fleeting nature of desires and the inevitability of suffering, we can diminish the will's grip on our minds and cultivate a more peaceful and resilient mindset. But if we are not careful, we can fall back into the trap of hope, which we were hoping to avoid in the first place. It's crucial to clarify that Schopenhauer isn't advocating for utter hopelessness. He isn't suggesting that we should abandon all goals and aspirations and simply resign ourselves to a life of misery. Instead, he is advocating for a re-evaluation of hope's role in our lives. He urges us to distinguish between realistic, achievable goals and unrealistic fantasies. The former can provide motivation and direction, while the latter only lead to disappointment and suffering. Differentiate between hoping for a specific outcome, such as winning the lottery, and striving towards a realistic goal, such as improving one's skills through practice. The former is based on chance and is largely beyond our control, while the latter is based on effort and is within our power to influence. This critical reframing offers a more nuanced understanding of what it means to embrace hope and move forward. Accepting the inherent suffering of life can lead to greater resilience, reduced anxiety, and a deeper appreciation for the present moment. Instead of hoping for a life free from pain, which is an unrealistic and ultimately unattainable goal, accepting that pain is an inevitable part of the human experience allows us to develop coping mechanisms and find meaning even in difficult circumstances. We can learn to navigate the challenges of life with greater equanimity and find moments of joy and connection even amidst suffering. This perspective stands in direct contrast to the idea of hope as a panacea for all problems. Some might argue that embracing Schopenhauer's view is a recipe for despair. But by acknowledging the truth about suffering, we can free ourselves from the illusion of happiness and cultivate a more authentic sense of peace. In the next section, we'll explore concrete steps you can take to integrate Schopenhauer's wisdom into your daily routine, transforming your relationship with hope, desire, and the inevitable challenges of life. We will delve into practical techniques for managing expectations, cultivating mindfulness, and finding meaning in suffering, offering you a toolkit for navigating the complexities of existence with greater awareness and resilience. These techniques will allow you to begin to truly implement Schopenhauer's perspective in your own life and to test its power for yourself. 9. Embracing reality. Schopenhauer's path to serenity, having traversed the landscape of Schopenhauer's philosophy, we arrive at a pivotal juncture, understanding that the relentless pursuit of hope, fueled by the insatiable will, often leads to suffering. Schopenhauer's core argument isn't to wallow in despair, but to achieve a profound acceptance of suffering as an inherent aspect of existence. This acceptance, paradoxically, becomes the very foundation for tranquility. Consider how the constant striving for a better job, a bigger house, a more fulfilling relationship keeps us perpetually chasing an elusive happiness. We must understand that we can break free from this cycle and accept the present. To fully grasp this, let's recap the key concepts that have guided our exploration. The will, that blind, driving force within us. Representation, the subjective lens through which we perceive the world. The fleeting nature of happiness, a mere cessation of suffering. And hope, which, when divorced from reality, perpetuates the cycle of desire and dissatisfaction. The core revelation here is that true serenity doesn't lie in fulfilling desires, but in diminishing them. This isn't passive resignation, but active acceptance, a mindful engagement with the present moment, free from the tyranny of unrealistic expectations. Think of it as the difference between constantly adjusting the sails to catch a shifting wind versus anchoring oneself firmly to the seabed, weathering the storm with equanimity. We've explored the pattern of will desire action, temporary relief, dissatisfaction, new desire. Acceptance, then, shatters this cycle. By accepting the inherent suffering of existence, we cease to be driven by the relentless pursuit of fleeting pleasures. We find a more stable state of contentment, not through the fulfillment of desires, but through their transcendence. Imagine someone constantly checking their phone for notifications, each ping offering a momentary dopamine rush, followed by a sense of emptiness. Now, contrast this with someone who puts their phone away, fully immersing themselves in a conversation or a creative project, finding satisfaction in the present activity itself. This shift in focus breaks the cycle of seeking external validation and cultivates inner peace. Schopenhauer's philosophy offers a powerful antidote to the pervasive anxieties of modern life. Society constantly bombards us with messages about what we should want, what we should achieve, and how we should look, fueling a never-ending cycle of striving and dissatisfaction. The modern struggle with social media exemplifies this, with the constant representation of success and happiness online further fueling the cycle of desire. But it is all merely a representation and not necessarily reality. Schopenhauer's perspective provides a framework for resisting these pressures, for cultivating inner peace amidst the chaos of contemporary society. By recognizing the inherent suffering of existence and detaching from the relentless pursuit of fleeting pleasures, we can find a more authentic and lasting sense of fulfillment. Let's address the initial, "what if?" question we posed at the outset. What if the very hope that fueled this achievement was also the source of potential suffering? The resolution is this. Hope can indeed be a source of suffering when it is based on unrealistic expectations and fuels the insatiable will. But this isn't a cause for despair. Rather, it's an invitation to a more mindful and realistic way of engaging with life. The tension is released by offering acceptance as a viable alternative, emphasizing that this isn't about giving up on life, but about approaching it with greater awareness and equanimity. Schopenhauer's aim isn't to promote despair, but to ground us in reality, enabling us to navigate its challenges with wisdom and grace. 10. Living without illusions. A call to action now. The challenge is to reevaluate our own relationship with hope and desire. How can you begin to integrate Schopenhauer's philosophy into your own life, starting today? The path begins with mindfulness. Practice observing your thoughts and desires without judgment, noticing the ways in which they drive your actions and influence your emotions. Question your desires. Are they truly your own, or are they imposed upon you by societal pressures or external influences? Cultivate gratitude for the present moment, appreciating the simple joys and connections that are available to you right now. Take concrete steps to diminish the power of the will. Explore creative outlets, such as painting, music, or writing, as a way to express yourself and find a sense of flow and detachment. Spend time in nature, immersing yourself in its beauty and serenity, allowing it to quiet the restless mind. Manage your expectations, recognizing that setbacks and disappointments are inevitable, and that they don't diminish your worth as a person. Find meaning in suffering by using difficult experiences as opportunities for growth and self-discovery. For further exploration, delve into Schopenhauer's The World as Will and Representation, a dense but rewarding read that will deepen your understanding of his philosophy. Explore works on mindfulness and acceptance-based therapies, such as acceptance and commitment therapy (ACT), which offer practical tools for managing difficult emotions and living in accordance with your values. Compare Schopenhauer's ideas with those of Stoicism, another ancient philosophy that emphasizes acceptance and resilience in the face of adversity. By letting go of unrealistic hopes and embracing the present moment, we can find true serenity, resilience, and freedom from the tyranny of the will. While life may be inherently filled with suffering, it is also filled with opportunities for beauty, connection, and meaning. By embracing reality, we can navigate its challenges with greater wisdom and grace. Embrace life as it is, for it is all that we have and all that we can truly experience.